just seems like it's more widespread. We're finding more people like in the doorway when we come in the morning.
You also got to understand, we want to be around our friends, our community, which is the homeless community.
From a man experiencing homelessness in Anchorage to a downtown business owner dealing with the impact, there are growing homeless camp frustrations from the bridge going to Government Hill to fires, a shooting, and trash in the Mountain View neighborhood with Davis Park. Now, we have heard from countless viewers about not feeling safe. All this comes as 50 people were found dead outside in Anchorage last year. And to talk about the state of the city and her plans is the mayor of Anchorage, Suzanne LaFrance. So how do we fix this?
Well, thank you for having me here tonight. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about what we're doing here at the municipality, because I know that homelessness is top of mind for most everyone here, and it's a #1 priority for our administration as well. We have been working hard to get out of crisis mode, and that means standing up a year-round shelter system so that we don't see the exodus of people on the streets in the spring when we shut down our emergency shelter. We're working to ensure that we have crisis response, because what we know is that homelessness is a symptom of many other issues in our community, and we have to address those issues. And we're working really hard to connect folks with supports, with treatment, and resources to make sure they can get into housing.
And I know you have a 10-year plan, but I do want to specifically talk about what is happening now across Anchorage. And we've heard for a while now, my producer has ready with some video about a plan. What is the plan?
Yeah, and our plan takes the approach of compassion and accountability. And we want to help those individuals who need help. And an example of the degree of vulnerability that we see from folks who are homeless, experiencing homelessness is, this year when we stood up non-congregate shelter, hotel rooms, we saw that just immediately over half of those beds were filled by individuals who have 3 or more disabling conditions. And that means folks who are amputees, who are in walkers, wheelchairs, who have cancer. So we recognize that there are individuals, who need help, and that it takes time to connect folks with resources, because many individuals who are homeless are experiencing or are survivors of trauma and are experiencing behavioral health issues, have substance abuse issues. Some are, kids who have, young people who have exited the foster care system. And so we want to ensure that we are providing options and outreach to those individuals. And then we also are stressing accountability. And I want to be very clear that when there is a public safety issue that involves crime and criminal activity, we will have a law enforcement response.
We have had situations, in particular in Davis Park, where there have been shootings and there has been someone who has died. Mm-hmm. That camp hasn't been cleared out. So what about the accountability there?
No, I agree. That's a real tough one, because it's an encampment that has been there now for years. And it's really challenging for the folks who live in Mountain View, in those neighborhoods. It's tough for some of the vulnerable people too living in those encampments. And so people have asked, are you going to abate? What's the plan? And given that there are at least 100 people living in that area, and it includes, also the surrounding places too, like the snow dump. At times, there can be 150. We've seen numbers that may be approaching 200. It's a very big camp. It's a complex situation.
It definitely is a complex situation with a lot of people, but nothing has changed. You said yourself that this has been there for years.
It has. It's an inherited issue that we have been focused on. And what we're doing is, one, we need to make sure that it's safe for outreach workers to connect with people there. We've got to align resources, because what we see is that when we abate camps, and we will continue to use abatement as a public safety tool. We've abated over 20 camps, But what we see is that if we don't have a place for folks to go, the camp just moves. And so we don't want to create a worse situation. And so right now, we are working to align resources. And when we have those resources in place, we will begin abatement.
But what do you say to those people in these neighborhoods? And I've watched this Government Hill Bridge homeless camp growing as well. So the people who live in places like Mountain View and downtown who continuously have to deal with this issue, what about their rights?
I agree. It's a really tough situation. And, my heart goes out to folks in Mountain View there because I know that it's been challenging and it's going on several years. We are working to address the issue again by aligning those resources and doing what we need to do so that we can abate the camp. Right now, we're in a transition year. We've got to get out of crisis mode because we have not had a...
How do we get out of crisis mode then?
Well, we do that by ensuring we've got a basic public safety net, that we have enough shelter beds for people to go. And shelter isn't the solution, right? But it's a first step a lot of times. And then connecting people with those resources, connecting people with the kinds of care that they need is really important. And again, ultimately ensuring that we have enough housing. We've got a housing shortage here. And so we've been very focused also while we address homelessness, that we are encouraging and doing what we can to ensure that more units are built here in Anchorage. And we also have been moving towards having our mobile crisis team operate 24 hours. These are all really important pieces. And again, we're in a transition period, and I hear how difficult it is, and I understand that piece. And it's a priority, and we've been working, since day one, since I took office on July 1, and we will continue to focus on getting out of crisis mode and then trying.
When do you think we will be out
too.
of crisis mode?
Well, we're seeing some progress in terms of this is the first year where we've had shelter in the budget, that it wasn't something that we continued to just come back to. We've recognized that this is something we need to plan for. And so part of what we're doing is moving away, taking steps to move away from having the 200-person shelter facility to smaller shelters that are more agile, that can better meet the needs of folks, and the folks in the shelter, and then the folks in the surrounding area as well.
Mayor Suzanne LaFrance, thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you, Rebecca.